Iran's supreme leader has vowed a harsh retaliation for the US airstrike in Baghdad that killed its top military commander. President Hassan Rouhani said Iran and other free nations of the region will take revenge for this gruesome crime from criminal America. Foreign Minister Javad Zarif condemned the killing as an act of state terrorism. More in this report. The killing of the top commander marked a dangerous escalation in the ongoing standoff between Washington and Tehran, which careened off one crisis to another since the US withdrew from the Iran nuclear deal in 2018. This latest escalation comes after protesters stormed the US embassy in Baghdad following a US attack on a pro-Iranian militia in Iraq and Syria. 8 other people, including Iraqi militia commander Abu Mahdi al-Muhandis, were also killed in the airstrike in Baghdad. The Pentagon said the attack was ordered by President Donald Trump. Meanwhile, thousands of people took to the streets in Tehran to denounce the killing of Major General Soleimani. Sensing the gravity of the situation, the United States has asked its citizens to leave Iraq immediately. Iran has now appointed Ismail Qani as Soleimani's successor. Well, for more on this story, we're joined by Mustafa Koshelzem, a political analyst from Tehran. Mustafa, thank you for joining us here on Indus News. Mustafa, I want to ask you, you say it's an act of terrorism. Iran's foreign minister says it's an act of state terrorism. I mean, can America, under international law, kill a civilian in another country from another country? Is that even allowed?
No, of course not. It's not allowed especially because Qasem Soleimani was official military general and commander of an official body, a state army, that's Iranian army, the IRGCs. The U.S. doesn't need to regard and respect international rules and regulations. They have already proved that. They proved it when they attacked Iraq's official armed forces last week and killed nearly 228 Iraqi Popular Mobilization Forces. And also they repeated the same early on Friday. They show that they don't feel any respect. As a matter of fact, there is a long record of statements, official statements and documents from U.S. Army generals who have always been saying that they are wary of any kind of military conflict with Iran. That's why I believe that the Pentagon has not been, it has been reluctant probably to do so, and it's been pushed to do so by the White House.
You're sitting there in Iran, you're there, you've seen the crowds of people there, you've heard Iran saying there's going to be a harsh retaliation, Mustafa. What kind of response do you think Iran's going to give for this action?
Well, definitely, first of all, there are two things that are definite. First, Iran would give a devastating response. The scene would be, the theater would be as wide as the world, not the region. And what I know is that sometimes Iranians give a fast response, a crushing one. Sometimes they keep the foes and enemies waiting in order to wear off their power and preparedness level in order to surprise them. What I know is that Tehran has vast options, from its robust missile power to its naval forces, speedboats in the Persian Gulf. They could hit the United States interests all across the globe, as well as the United States allies in the region. They could block the supply of oil through the Strait of Hormuz, as well as Bab el-Mandeb or anywhere else they would like to. Also, Iran has strong allies all across the Middle East. They could also wreak havoc on the U.S. and its allies in the region. So far, many popular groups in Iraq have stressed that they would go for an attack on all U.S. bases in Iraq soon, independent from Iran. That's their own retaliation.
Mustafa, thank you. That was Mustafa Koshelzem there from Tehran, a political analyst, talking about our top story, and that is the assassination of the Iranian general, which has also divided US Congress during praise and criticism. Democrats criticized the killing, while Republicans were mostly united in their praise of President Trump's decision. More in this report.
Senators Lindsey Graham, Tom Cotton, and Marco Rubio backed Trump, saying it sends a strong message to Iran. Senator Bernie Sanders called it a dangerous escalation which brings the Middle East closer to another disastrous war. Democrat presidential frontrunner Joe Biden said no American would mourn Soleimani's death, but warned of consequences for such a high-profile assassination. Senators Elizabeth Warren and Tom Udall called it a reckless move. Democratic Congressman Seth Moulton said it could worsen an already tense situation. Senator Chris Murphy claimed the U.S. president did not have the legal authority to order the strike without congressional approval.
Well, governments are also expressing concern over the killing of Iran's Major General. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres called for parties to exercise maximum restraint to avoid escalation in the region. In a statement, Mr. Guterres said the world cannot afford another war in the Gulf. Pakistan's Foreign Office expressed deep concern over the situation. Russia's President Vladimir Putin says the killing will inflame the situation in the Middle East, and China has expressed concerns and called on Iran and the US to show restraint. Iraq's Prime Minister Adel Abdul Mahdi said the recent escalation could lead to a war. Iran's allies Hezbollah and Syria also called the raid a blatant act of American aggression. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has questioned the world's silence over the ethnic cleansing of Muslims in India. In a series of tweets, Khan said Indian police is persecuting Muslims on the behest of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. India has been rocked by countrywide protests against the citizenship law, which critics say discriminates Muslims. 25 people have been killed since the demonstrations against the law began on the 11th of December. Several Indian states have refused to implement the law. Well, North Korea says any attempt to undermine its survival will be met with an immediate and powerful strike. State media reports North Korea is now engaging in an all-out effort to build up its national defense capability. Earlier, U.S. Defense Secretary Mark Esper called on Kim to exercise restraint. He said the best path forward is to still have a political agreement on denuclearizing North Korea. Esper said the resumption of large-scale military exercises with South Korea remain an option. South Korea's main opposition, the Liberty Korea Party, said its senior officials will visit the US next week to discuss tensions. US President Donald Trump has warned Turkey against any foreign interference in Libya. This comes after the Turkish parliament approved the deployment of troops to support Tripoli's government of national accord. In a phone call with President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, Trump said interference in Libya will complicate the situation. In a joint statement, Greece and Cyprus condemned Ankara's decision, saying it poses a serious threat to stability in the region. The Arab League also rejected Turkey's growing involvement in Libya. Egypt called the decision a blatant violation of international law and UN Security Council resolutions. Hello again, it's good to have you back. The UN Security Council will meet today behind closed doors to discuss the violence in Syria's Idlib. The meeting comes at the request of Britain and France, supported by the United States. US President Donald Trump and Turkey's Recep Tayyip Erdogan agreed on the need for de-escalation there. On Thursday, UNICEF Executive Director Henrietta Fore called for a stop to the hostilities in northwest Syria. Diplomats say they hope the session will discuss the reauthorization of cross-border humanitarian aid. Eight people have died after a boat carrying 15 migrants sank off the coast of western Turkey. The Interior Ministry says 3 women were among the dead. A search operation is underway to rescue the missing migrants. 34 migrants died at sea off the coast of Turkey last year. "18 people have been killed after a Sudanese military plane crashed in the West Darfur state. The aircraft crashed 5 minutes after takeoff from an airport in the state capital of El Geneina. Army spokesman Amr Mohammed Al Hassan said the victims included 7 crew members, 3 judges and 8 civilians. He said 4 children were among those killed. An investigation is underway to determine the cause of the crash. The plane was in El Janina to deliver aid to the area. El Janina has seen several tribal violence in recent weeks and has sparked recently and has claimed at least 48 lives. In Sri Lanka, 4 Air Force officers died in a plane crash in the country's mountainous town of Haputale. Military spokesperson Chandana Wickremesinghe says the plane crashed after taking off from the southern airbase of Wirawila. Wickremesinghe said the plane was headed to Ratmalana when it crashed. He said the cause of the crash is being investigated. This is the worst air crash in Sri Lanka since 5 crew members died in December 2014. The United States has sanctioned Cuba's Armed Forces Minister Leopoldo Sintra Frias. Frias is a career military officer who joined Fidel Castro's rebel army in 1957. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo accused him of human rights violations and his support of Venezuela's president. Pompeo said Frias' ministry is responsible for Cuba propping up Nicolas Maduro's regime in Venezuela. Washington's top diplomat said the ministry was guilty of torturing Cubans. The sanctions also prevent the minister's children from entering the United States. In Indonesia, the death toll from floods has risen to 43 after torrential rains caused landslides in the capital, Jakarta. Disaster management officials warned the death toll may rise. Officials said 30,000 people fled their homes because of rivers flooding at least 90 neighborhoods. The city's main airport has suspended operations, and the authorities have decided to attempt cloud seeding in a bid to prevent further rainfall.